How's it, Data fam? Welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to be speaking about how I passed the Azure Fundamental exams, or how you can also pass the Azure Fundamental exam. If you're new, please make sure that you like and subscribe so that more people can actually see this content. Without wasting any time, let's get into it. So how exactly did I pass the Azure Fundamentals exam? Look, I'm going to take you guys through a couple of materials. So we're going to switch over to my laptop, and where I'm going to be taking you guys through where exactly I learned, what material I actually used, and some of the exam practice that I used, and what did I actually use as a guidance in terms of what I should focus on the most as opposed to the others, right? But before that, let's talk a little bit about the exam. Look, this is a great exam, honestly, if you want to get a fundamental introduction to what is cloud computing and how is it actually used, and how do organizations actually benefit from using cloud computing, right? So the Azure Fundamental certification is really good in a sense that, if you want to go and do the AWS cloud practitioner later on, it's a good foundation. Honestly, the concepts that you learn from this one can also be taken there to AWS, right? I think the only thing is that some of the tools are native to Azure. You might not find them there. They might call it virtual machine on Azure, and AWS, they might actually call it elastic compute, right? So there is a bit of different naming, but the fundamental core concepts of cloud computing, this certification is very much beginner friendly for anyone, whether you're coming from IT or non-IT. It really does cater for everyone, right? Look, it is a great sort of starting point for anyone, honestly, right? Now, the other thing that I want people to be cautious of is the exam format, right? In the exam, you're not going to be getting any sort of like, let's say, case study type of thing, right? It's not so much case study based. What they are assessing you in the exam, they want to get an understanding of whether you know the different products, you know the different services, you know how everything is actually set up. So it's really set around asking you questions that test your understanding of what exactly is cloud computing, what is the benefit of cloud computing, what are the different services that Microsoft has for a specific problem, right? It's really about you knowing the products. That's one thing that I would say. And the questions are multiple choice, drag and drop, true or false, right? Those are the kind of questions that you get. You're not going to be getting anything crazy, especially for the fundamental side of things. They don't really do any sort of like crazy questions. It's really about you understanding the tools and knowing when to use what. And also it's just going to be multiple choice, drag and drop. So it's really not a hectic exam, but you need to make sure that you fully study and prepare for the exam. I think you get about 45 minutes to finish the exam, and you get about 45 or less questions, usually around 30 to 45. I think that's the range of questions that you might find yourself getting. I think they might even go to 50, but nothing hectic. So the number of questions varies every time, but you need to basically score about 700 points, or 70% technically, for you to actually pass the exam. Anything below that, unfortunately, you will not pass the exam. The best part about this exam, you do not need to renew it like the other sort of like Azure exam. So that's one of the things that I'd say. But I think I've covered quite a lot. I want us to switch over to my laptop. We'll take you guys through some of the material that I use, and also take you guys through the Azure Fundamentals exam and what exactly it covers. We've switched over to my laptop. So I'm going to take you through some of the material that I used to prepare for the exam, right? I get a lot of questions like, what did I use to prepare for the exam? Listen, to be honest with you guys, the Azure the Microsoft Learn platform is sufficient for you to prepare for the exam. Like I said, the exam is not really hectic. You just need to have studied. That's the important thing. Some people ask if it's okay to not read the material here. I disagree with that. You need to make sure that you've read everything that is on the Microsoft Learn platform, because they will ask you questions based on this platform. All right. So the moment you land onto the page over here, you can clearly see that, okay, cool. This is a beginner level certification. You learn about Azure Compute, networking, and storage. So some of the important things that you learn. But the important area is here. So this is where you will get all of your learning material. So within each of, so Microsoft basically covers three components. If you're going to be writing the Azure Fundamentals, is learning the basics, which is the describe Azure fundamental, what is cloud computing and stuff like that. Most of the fundamentals you will mostly find them here. So if I click into this, you'll see that all of the basic concepts like, describing compute, benefits of cloud, describing the types of cloud, those are some of the things that you actually learn on here. Then the second component, which takes up a lot of time, right? This one is when you learn about the infrastructure that actually makes up cloud computing. You learn about the Azure core architecture, compute services, networking. So this one is a tricky one for those that are not, let's say, not technical. The cybersecurity one might be a bit more technical, but it's not so difficult to understand. You learn about storage services. You learn about identity and access management, which is really is an important concept in cloud, right? The last part is really more on the governance side of things, right? How do you manage cost? How do you describe? This is about features, tools, and Azure compliance and stuff like that. So you have to learn about all the different compliance tools, right? And it's really is beginner friendly, but the material is quite detailed, right? Normally, I think you could spend like 2 weeks preparing for the exam. Let's say if you're giving yourself like 2 hours a day, 2 weeks should be decent, right? Some you can still do it in one weekend if you spend the whole weekend studying, but I do not recommend it. I'll roughly say you can see the commitment of hours, right? Here's 56 hours, it's 2 hours, 3 hours. So roughly, I feel like 24 hours is enough time for someone to really practice for this exam. So if you give yourself 24 hours, you should be ready for the exam. But the other place that I think is really important is the practice exam. So I use this quite a lot to see if I understand certain concepts, because if you get the question wrong, they actually do provide you with an answer. So you want to take out the practice assessment, right? That's really important. In terms of registering for the exam, right, I did a separate video on how to sort of like register for the exam, so do not worry about that. The pricing really changes depending on the country and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about that. But the research that I think is really important is the exam sort of like study guide. This is really important because they literally break down to you any changes, so you want to check this out before you write the exam. So they tell you what are the skills being measured, right? You can request an additional 30 minutes to complete the exam. So in the case that you need that additional time, you can. It's open book, but I do not recommend you opening a book during the exam, honestly, right? So they even give you a detail of some of the skills that are going to be measured, so you want to make sure that you read this before the exam, because they do make changes there and there, right? It's really is important for you to do that. But what I want you guys to pay attention to is the skills at a glance, right? So basically 25 to 30% is on the cloud fundamental concepts, 35 to 40% is on the architecture, and 30 to 35 is on the management and governance. So when you prepare for the exam, make sure that you're more prepared for the bigger areas, as they do. Like these two alone are literally sufficient for you to pass the exam, right? But cloud fundamentals are really easy, so you want to look at that. And it further breaks down in detail what you need to learn. So if you find yourself not being able to do any of the things here, please go back and restudy for the exam, right? So I think it's a really amazing resource, honestly, to use if you want to prepare for the exam. But the other resource that I think is really cool for everyone to use, there's something called CertifyIQ. I've also attached the link to this one, right? So CertifyIQ actually provides you with practice exam questions, completely free, right? You do have to pay if you want to get the full download of the exam. So once you've logged on, just make sure that you log on. You go to Microsoft. So they provide a couple of certifications, but if you go to Microsoft and then let's say look for the AZ-900, right? Let's go for AZ-900. There we go. So you can see that once you say AZ-900, this is really cool also for you to get a sense of what they asked during the exam. So please use this once you've studied, right? So this is the type of question they'll ask you, like drag and drop. So you drag and drop the answers that you think is correct, right? So then it also provides you with the solution and explanation to why that is correct. You do get your multiple choices, right? Then you have to choose the correct one and also explain why you think this is actually correct, right? You can actually download the free PDF and have it offline, but if you want to get the full one, unfortunately you have to pay for this one. But that's one thing that I would say. It's a really great platform for you to actually practice the exam. I did also do a live session when I was going through some of these questions. So if you want to check out my live sort of like session, please make sure that you do. I think it's really great. Just go to my YouTube channel and just check out the AZ-900 series. I do have an AZ-900 series Honestly, guys, the exam is not so hectic, but what you need to make sure that you do is prepare for the exam. And these are the only resources that I use to actually help me prepare for the exam. Yeah, if you guys find this video valuable, please make sure that you like and subscribe.